Hello, everybody. Another episode of Death Taught Us How to Live. It's going to be a great episode. But before we get started, let's start the intro.
Mama told me don't wait on miracles. Don't give them reason to come for your soul. Don't beg for nobody. Nobody can get you at all. You know you got it if you want it all. Mama told me don't wait on miracles. Don't.
Welcome back, everybody. How you guys doing today? I have a great guest of mine. This lady's actually from Georgia, actually, and her name is Janice Johnson, and I'm so happy and privileged to have this sister on with me today on Death Taught Us How to Live. So Janice, how you doing today, sister?
Thank you. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for having us come into your home and actually hearing your story and hearing how Death taught us how to live. So can you go back to that day? Tell us exactly what happened that day when you had your stroke and date, time, whatever, all that stuff that led up to your stroke. Can you give us like a quick synopsis, about 5 minutes long?
Sure. The only thing I can remember was I was feeling very, very tired, very, very, very fatigued. And I told my husband that I was going to take a nap. And when I woke up the next day, that I wanted to go to the emergency walk-in clinic. And he said, yes. The next thing I remember, 4 days later, I was in the hospital.
Whoa. So you passed out. You didn't even remember you had a stroke at all.
No, I think what my husband told me was they found me on the floor and they thought that I probably was getting up to go to the bathroom. They found me the next day. They didn't even know I fell.
Really?
So he was on one side of the house, I was on the other side of the house, and he found me on the floor.
Oh, so
And
your
they called the
husband's already
squad.
in the hospital already?
No, we were at home when that happened.
Copy.
And he thought that I don't know what he thought, but when he didn't see me in the house, so he went in the house looking for me, and he found me on the floor, and he thought I was dead.
Oh my God. Oh my God. So I can imagine what he went through with that time of 4 days, what's going on within his mind, and what's going on to his wife. Do you know what type of stroke did you have, and when did this happen?
No, it happened April 9, 2021.
Okay.
The only thing that I know that they told me was that I had a bilateral stroke, is all that they ever told me. They never told me anything else, just that I had a stroke and that I was in the hospital in Jacksonville, Florida, and that I wasn't going to die, but that I had a severe stroke.
Okay. So they told you had a bilateral stroke. So when you say that, for the people that don't understand, it basically means that both your hemispheres is basically affected by it.
Right.
Both hemispheres of your brain.
Right.
You don't know, the right side of your brain mostly controls the left side and vice versa. So when you had a bilateral,
Right.
I heard people before had what's called a pond stroke and their whole body shut down. And the only thing they could do is move their eyelids. So when this happened to you, what deficits did you have?
When I woke up in the hospital, I was nonverbal. I was actually paralyzed from my neck down.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't swallow. And fortunately, the day that they were getting ready to prepare me for a tube, all of a sudden I passed the swallow test. But I had already failed one swallow test. And then finally, I was able to swallow the second time. And then after that happened, they were able to discharge me from the hospital. So I went home from the hospital, and the only thing that I could move was my eyelids, my eyes. I couldn't move anything else.
So basically, and I'm not sure if they called it the same thing, but when I hear people talk about that, that is called what's called locked-in syndrome. That basically you're locked inside of your body, and the only thing you can move is your eyelids. So that was what happened to you, right?
That was me.
Okay. All right. So there's a lot of things that you said that I want to really dive into so people can understand exactly what it is, because I don't believe, and I'm not blaming hospitals on this, but I just don't believe they're educating us enough as the patient and also the caregivers about what's actually happening to us. So you said something about you couldn't swallow and you had to pass or fail a swallow test. What that is about is dysphagia. Did you hear that word before, dysphagia?
I heard it from you. You were the first person that ever mentioned that word to me.
So dysphagia is basically, we have this pipe that goes down, and it can either, we have this, I'm not even sure the name of the actual muscle, but there's a muscle that closes off from your lung and also opens up to your stomach. So when you breathe, it breathes in, it goes into your lungs. But when you swallow, there's a muscle that closes off the airway to your lungs and goes straight down into your esophagus, into your stomach. So when you cannot move that particular muscle, you can't swallow. And if you do put liquid in, you could catch pneumonia and also you can respirate, and you could actually drown within your own body. So that's what's actually happening there. Okay. Janice, you came to me because you said something pretty interesting to me, and you're a very vocal person. I love that so much. But you said something to me that there is so many people out where you live that, especially in our community, that's not getting the proper help, the proper attention that they need after they have a stroke. You know, they just be left by the wayside. And then you was asking me, what can you do about it? I was like, well, we have to first educate ourselves and then move forward from there. So what I'm asking you, what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish in your little bubble of that southeast of Georgia?
Yes, Southeast Georgia.
Southeast Georgia.
Many of them, well, they don't even understand what aphasia is. Until I started following you. I think, well, I did. My speech therapist said, you have aphasia. And I said, what is that? And she said, it's a loss of words. Well, what does that mean? Because I was going to speech therapy and I still didn't know what it meant. I knew that I was having difficulty speaking, and I was seeing her 3 times a week. But what does aphasia mean? I saw the sign on the door, but I didn't know what it meant until I was actually a patient. And fortunately for me, I was able to get help. But not everybody gets help.
So now you're bringing up a new word. So first word we have is dysphagia. And now this new word you're bringing up is aphasia. Now, for people that don't understand the difference between the two, aphasia is the problem of communicating. It could be from your speech. It could be from writing. It could actually be spelling. It could be trying to put words together. So you're saying right here to me, Jen, is that you had this thing called aphasia, but you didn't really understand what it meant. And I think that's what I was telling you before. It's very difficult to speak to a stroke survivor because you don't know what that person is comprehending at that particular time. So that person could have explained it to you 10 times already, but in your mind, everything is blah, you don't know what it is. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't know what that solution is for the people that don't know what that word is or never heard that word, or probably think they never heard the word because they probably heard it before, don't know. Because, you know, when you're in the hospital and when this is just happening to you, you don't remember anything really. Like you said, it was 4 days that you don't even remember. So you don't even know if you was up or not, and you don't know if anybody was talking to you. So I'm liking what you're talking about now, because something's happening in the community that you are becoming aware of, that people are not getting this information. What do you suggest that we do to actually make that happen?
I think we need to talk about it. And what I did was, I'm fortunate, and the church that I attend, my pastor's wife is a speech pathologist. So I reached out to her and I said to her, I said, what is aphasia? And she said, it is a loss of words. And I said, will it get better? She said, with time and with practice, you have to go to therapy. And I said, what can I expect? And she said, everyone's different. And I said to her, all of my doctors kept telling me that hydration was important. They kept telling me to drink water. I said to her, what does that mean for me? And she said, you have to have enough hydration for the brain to heal. If you don't have enough hydration, the brain won't heal. So she said, make sure you stay hydrated. And I said, okay. So then I drink a gallon of water today. every day. And my aphasia, a year later, I'm 14 months post-stroke, and I have come so far, but there were things that I learned from different people that I needed to do. And when I went to my church and I gave my testimony, but what I told them was, I talked about aphasia. Nobody in the congregation knew what aphasia is. And I have seen other people in the community, especially people of color, don't talk about it. They don't, they'll say, well, he doesn't talk or she doesn't talk. Why aren't people talking about it? If you are a caregiver and that individual doesn't speak, engage them in conversation. My husband did that from the very beginning. He knew that he needed to have interaction with me. So he made me get every day, he made me have conversations with him. Every day we watched the news. Every day he made sure I understood what I was comprehending on the news, and it's helped me greatly.
Hold on. You're giving me a lot. Hold on. Let's dissect that a little bit. So and the reason why I'm slowing you down is because the one thing that we're talking about is aphasia, and the people with aphasia, you're giving them so much information, sometimes they don't process it. So we have to take things at baby steps. So, okay, what I'm hearing from you, and I'm very happy that your husband was very patient with you, and he actually involved you with conversations and things of that nature.
Yes.
I don't know if you know this answer or not, but I need to know, with your husband as being your caregiver, what information did he get so he could know that he could be patient with you and didn't treat you like you was idiotic and you didn't have no sense because you couldn't speak properly? What was in him that made him understand that his wife Janice was still there?
I know that I saw him reading all the time. Like I was laying in the bed and I couldn't move, and he would come in and make sure I was okay. But I saw him with literature in the house, and I know that he was reading everything that he could get his hands on. And so, and his life, he's dedicated his life to human services. So he kind of had a little bit of a foundation, if you will. And every time we went to physical therapy or speech therapy, he got all the information that he could to enable him to take care of me and my daughter, who had helped us. So it was the three of us.
So Janice, this is what I'm hearing. One, he already had the patience within him because he was dealing with human services already. So he understood that part of humanity. Two, he cared enough to understand what was going on with his lady, his boo, his queen, whatever he wants to call you. He had enough love for you to actually move forward. So I have a question for you with that. Like for me, unfortunately for me and my ex-wife, it didn't pan out that way. But I almost understand to a T why I did it. It's because before, our foundation was cracking. And then after my stroke, it made it even worse. So I'm asking you, as a person that is married that also had a stroke and you're still married today, what advice do you give to someone that is watching this show that did not have a stroke but is getting older and health issues might come up in the future? What do you give them as an advice, as like for marriage? Like if you're on rocky roads or you angry with them, do you go to sleep angry? Do you mend things up real quickly? Do you try to get resolution? What is the key to actually being right with your spouse?
Well, we've been together for 35 years. And when I came home from the hospital, I didn't even know what was going on. He just said to me, "We're in this together." And so, and he said, I remember him sitting on the chair next to me, holding me, and he said, "We're in this together. We're going to get through it together."
How did that help you with your recovery? Knowing that someone's there.
It helped a lot. He was there all the time. If I didn't understand something, like if I was trying to text, when I first started communicating, it was very difficult. And I would say to him, "How do I say this? How do I say that?" And he would stop what he was doing and give me the attention that I needed at that moment to do whatever I was doing. And he just did it.
So I want people at home to understand this, is that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Janice. I know when I had my stroke, I saw life completely differently. but I also was able to tell people's energy. I could tell if they really like me, or if they were just tolerating me, or if they like, I guess when things are taken away from you, other things are ignited. So
Right.
I knew who was really there for me and who was not. And the people that really was there for me, that was so much a refreshing thing. Was that the same thing that happened for you?
Well, see, in my case, it was the height of the pandemic, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So when it was time for me to come home, um, my family wanted me to go to rehab. The doctors wanted me to go to rehab, but my husband decided that rehab was not safe for me. I needed to come home because I hadn't got my booster yet, because at that time I wasn't quite old enough to get the booster. And they knew that if I went to the rehab, I was taking chances. So they had a family meeting and decided, well, my family, it was my husband and my daughter, and they had a family meeting and decided that it was in my best interest to come home and that they were going to take care of me. And that's what they did. So the day that I got discharged from the hospital, I came home, and my husband was there and my daughter was there. And they got me in the house, and they gave me a bath and made sure all of my needs were met. And he never left me since I had a stroke. The only time that he left me since I had a stroke was I did have to have to repair a damage done to my heart as a result of the stroke. I had to have a cardiac ablation, and I ended up having to be in the hospital overnight. But that was the only time since the stroke that he's left me.
And you're being a little coy with this, so I'm gonna ask you this again. How did that feel for you? Like, I know people outside that can't see it, but for us as the stroke survivor, having that reinsurance, having that trust that you know that person is there for you, and you probably know that he's hurting inside because he wants his lady back, or he's sacrificing his life, and you know that. But what does that do for your morale as a stroke survivor, knowing that someone's in your corner?
I knew that I was going to be, I'll be able to get through this with him in my corner. If I was fighting that fight alone and trying to heal at the same time, I don't know what would have happened to me. I don't know what would have happened to me.
I get it. You know, some of us have these strokes, and we have to fight the stroke, fight society, fight our loved ones, and still try to be that same person. And by you saying what you just said, I'm understanding that you have some type of foundation with your husband. There was a lot of respect, a lot of love for each other before your stroke. So when this happened, it wasn't a chore from him. It was an act of service of love.
Yes, and it was he I mean, when I say that I was immobilized from my neck down, he had to do everything. He had to call, he was my caregiver. He had to call all medical providers. He had to do everything. In addition to running the household, he had to do all of that. I couldn't barely speak, so I couldn't call the doctor's office. I couldn't make appointments. I couldn't do anything. And then on top of that, when I came home from the hospital, I came home from the hospital with a walker. So I was walking with a walker, and he had to get me, he got me up before I got to physical therapy. He got me up out the bed and had me walking around in the house before I even had my very first physical therapy session. And he walked behind me and he told me to take my time, and he helped me get back on my feet.
So
when I walked into physical therapy, they thought that based on my medical records that had been sent to them, they thought I was going to come in on a stretcher. And they were surprised when I walked in with a walker. But my husband got me out the bed a week before my first appointment with physical therapy. He had me up in the house walking around, holding on to, stationary objects inside the house. And he had a walker, and that's what he was doing. He was walking behind me and helped me walk through the house.
I'm glad you're saying that, because you're bringing up something that's pretty interesting to me. The power of of trust, the power of love, the power of God, the power of healing ourselves, instead of just saying, okay, this diagnosis is given to us and this is what we're going to be. But once you get those inspirations in you, there's something that happens within us that makes us move forward, because it's like mind over matter. A prayer, whatever you use it to actually get to that particular place. But this is really fresh within your mind, so I want to know this, because I don't know if a lot of caregivers in their initial phase of being a caregiver understand this part, because I don't think there's an instruction manual that's been given to people. But something your husband was doing that I find very interesting. One, he was very slick, because he left literature around, so you can actually see that he actually is understanding what's going on with you. So he was taking notice of you, one, so you felt like you was important. Two, he didn't neglect you and just leaving you in that bed. He got you up. And three, he took care of everything around the house. I think a lot of people, when they become a caregiver, they look at the individual and like, oh man, this is my wife, this is my son, this is my father, whatever it is, and they start feeling sorry and start feeling bad, and they forget that you have to be a nurse as well. So you have to put those issues to the side and take care of that particular person, and also be their husband, also be their wife. What advice would you give to a new caregiver that is facing something like this? What's one thing that your husband did that you found instrumental for your recovery?
He was constantly reassuring me that I was going to get better, and he was going to be there with me every step of the way.
I get it. How did that make you feel?
So important, because I couldn't do anything for myself, nothing. I remember one time, I guess I had an allergic reaction to a medication and I was itching, yet I had aphasia and I couldn't speak. And I was in the bed and he was in another room. I think he was maybe watching TV or something, and I was itching, but I couldn't tell them that I couldn't scratch. And so the only thing I could say was itch, 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 and he heard me screaming, itch, 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 and he jumped up and he went in there. And I can remember him taking, I don't know if it was Benadryl or whatever it was, and he was just rubbing it all over me because I was itching, and that's all I could say was, no. And I was said, itch, 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 but he took care of it. And he'd rub it on one part of my arm, and then I'd say, itch, 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 itch. And then he'd look at me and say, where? And I don't know how he knew what part of my body it was, but he would put it on there until finally I stopped saying itch, 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 because that's all I could say. I'd say itch, 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 itch. And as a matter of fact, my grandchildren call him Papa, right? So when I couldn't call my husband's name, Jerome, I called him Papa. I said, Papa, Papa, Papa. And that's how we communicated. I was calling him Papa until I could say his name. His name is Jerome. Until I could say Jerome, I was calling him Papa.
That get a giggle out of you, huh? Hey, but whatever works. But like I said, you guys had this connection. You guys understand each other, and it was natural love. And by what you just said to me, that is so amazing. I can imagine a lot of people wish they had some type of connection with another person, that they could be in another room, pay attention to something else, and understand that you're in pain or need help. I love it. But Janice, we're at the end, and right at the end, I do these rapid fire questions. I have 6 of them for you. So these 6 questions I'm going to ask you, I ask them one at a time. And when I ask it, I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and I'm not going to interrupt you. I want you to give me the answer. And then once you're done with it, say, Greg, I'm ready for the next question. And I'll give you the next one. And at the end of that, I'll leave the show to you to close out. If any information you want to give out to people, any way you want people to contact you, feel free to give them that information at that time. Are you ready, Janice?
I am.
Question number 1. Did your perception of life change after your stroke?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Life is precious, and we should never take it for granted. It could be here today, and tomorrow, man, it could be another whole day. Life is precious and don't take it for granted. I'm ready for the next question.
Question number 2. What is important about life?
I think it's so important how you treat people and how you receive other people, because when you need, you won't even know, you don't even have to understand. It is so important. It's just so important. And it's so important to be kind to people. The kindness will come back to you. It always comes back to you. Next question.
Question number 3. What are you trying to accomplish with this new life of yours?
I want to give hope to the hopeless. I want to cherish every moment that I have. And I want to experience the life that has been offered to me with the second chance. I wake up every morning just being alive and looking at the sun, and every single night I look forward to the sun going down and the stars coming out. This is a second chance at life, and I want every bit that is left for me. Next question.
Okay, question number 4. What advice would you give someone within their first year of rehab from brain trauma?
I want to say it's overwhelming for everyone. It's overwhelming for the patient. It's overwhelming for the caregivers. It's overwhelming to the family. And take it slow. Ask questions. Take nothing for granted. Small gains are gains. And remember that. Small gains are gains. This is not a sprint. It's a marathon, and take it as it is. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And remember, eat an elephant one bite at a time. Next question.
Okay. Now, I only want one person. A lot of people give me multiple people, one person. If you had died, who would have been most affected, and how is your relationship with that person now?
That would be my husband. Like I said, we've been together for 35 years, and ever since I had my stroke, he hasn't left my side except for the one time that I had to be hospitalized. And our relationship is even stronger than it is now. We laugh together, we do everything together, and I want him to be around for a long time.
Okay.
Next question.
The 6th and final question. What did the threat of death teach you?
The threat of death, again, taught me that life is so precious and it can be taken away in a split second. And so every day, thank not just God, just thank the people that love you, who are important to you, and cherish them. Every single night, I tell my husband every single night that I love him. And I tell him every single day, thank you for taking care of me. Thank you so much, because without him, I wouldn't have made it this far. I'm 14 weeks out. I'm 14 months out, and I'm at 95% restored. And I know it's because of him. I know this is because of him. Even sometimes when I didn't feel like pushing myself, he pushed me. He said, you can do this, you can get over it, and we're going to do this together.
Okay. Well, Ms.
Yep.
Johnson, I thank you so much for coming on my show today. I really appreciate your wisdom. I really appreciate your transparency about your marriage and how great your caregiver / husband and also your daughter was for you, and inspiring other people to actually be great caregivers and also recovering. But before we leave, I would like you to close out the show. I want you to just tell us anything you want to tell us, and the floor is yours. Go ahead, sister.
Well, it is National Aphasia Month this month, and I think that we miss the mark in our communities, people of color, that we have so much perhaps going on, but aphasia is real. It is an invisible disability. And it's not that we lack intellect. Sometimes we can't find the words to say, but I just want to bring awareness to people and tell them that they need to be patient with people and find what works for you, so that we can help other people with this situation. I know for me, I do brain games and I do different things to help myself. I pay attention to my nutrition. I do exercises as best that I can. I walk. I try to be the best person that I could be. But for me, I think the best thing is that bringing awareness to aphasia and getting it out into the communities so that we can help other people that need our help. And if anybody wants to send me an email, I'm at jjohn1521@gmail.com. And you can reach out to me if you want to talk about aphasia, or talk about my recovery. And my hope is that I can help someone else the way that I've been helped myself.
Well, Janice, Miss Janice Johnson, I thank you so much for actually being there on Deaf Told Us How to Live and sharing your life with us. Like Janice said, you can find her. You can see that information. I will put it at the bottom or in the comments. You can actually reach out to her. And also leave any comments inside of this video. If you want her to answer any questions, I'll make sure she gets it. So Janice, thank you so much for actually sharing your story. I appreciate you, my sister. And like you said, June is National Aphasia Month. So please get out there and find out what aphasia is. If you know someone that has it, have problem with communication after a speech, please get them help and be patient. Thank you so much, sister. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much. Good night.
So me wake up and shake up, ready to face the day. Life is here to live, make use of it abundantly. Cause we don't know the hour or the day. Time is such a gift, try and control your destiny. We don't know the hour or the day. Unity is strength, they stand as one without delay. Cause no bad vibe.